Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Warcraft news. You know, it almost looked like there wouldn't be anything to talk about for today's episode, but then Blizzard introduced one of the largest boosts to leveling, well, pretty much ever. We've got that, plus we've also seen the implementation and subsequent refinement of their Alt Essence acquisition solution. And it's not perfect, but it is now actually far, far better than it was when it was originally put into the game, plus a few other topics to talk about. Now, do you want to help us out? Do you want to also watch the first 2 episodes of our TBC documentary series, about 45 minutes of content, 40 minutes of content, and then also get this month's Fantasy Human themed Patreon rewards and pre-order of the Mage class pin? If so, Patreon is the place to go, and now that I'm cooped up at home a little bit more, I'm going to be trying to make a good bit more off-the-cuff BTS content there. Plus, we've also got a big series of weekly lore blogs planned as well. And, you know, right now it's a very challenging time, especially employing people, and certainly without our patrons, I would be in a lot more of a stressful situation right now. So a massive thank you and credit to them. It's really been helpful. And with that, let's get going. So, do you want 100% more experience? And do you want that to also stack with your heirlooms? Well, to get it, you've just got to log in. That's it. It's just there. Blizzard have added a 100% XP buff to all World of Warcraft accounts, Starter Edition, Legion, and BFA, and it's going to last from now until April 20th. Though I actually wouldn't be surprised if we'd see maybe an extension to that if the current situation in the world that I can't mention on this platform obviously persists, and I think it very well actually might. Now, on that, Blizzard actually seem to have been very good to their staff. They gave people like drive-through care packages of essentials, and they seem to have been quite well prepared for working at home. And look, I know the big corporate side of ActiBliz is often worth bashing and should be bashed, but this move here, this is genuinely great, so a credit to them. It certainly is. I mean, it's challenging for all businesses. I mean, as for us, like our staff across both games and YouTube are now working from home. I'm the only one in the studio. Slight hit of production there. We've kind of had to get back up on our feet in a few ways, but we should be back up to scratch in no time. So certainly is quite a situation, and it's good to see Blizzard chip in here. Gaming provides a vital role in giving people entertainment. That is needed now, and this experience boost will certainly help people breeze through the leveling. And when you actually log in and use this in a new character, I think what you're really going to notice is the combination with the 735 leveling revamp. You see, previously, if you had 155% move speed with all your heirlooms as well, you'd be, like, not as fast as that would suggest. Why? Because you'd outlevel zones all the time, and then you'd lose loads of time to just traveling about the place. But with the revamp, the zones scale, so you're not going to lose all of that travel time. So I think this actually might be some of the fastest leveling times we've really seen in the game. I mean, hell, I'm just thinking about Warlords of Draenor. Like, when that expansion launched, I think I got from 91 to 92 in 25 minutes because I knew the routes perfectly with the treasures and all of that. So I'm thinking with flying, treasures, bonus objectives, and this boost, God, you're going to go through Warlords of Draenor so fast. So there you go. It's the time to get alts now, pretty much. I think that this is going to be a very successful move for Blizzard, and in a way, it reminds me of what they did during a rather dire time in the past with Mists of Pandaria. But before that, let's talk about the Essence updates. So the Essence catch-up system has arrived, and it kind of received mixed reception. You see, if your main was a DPS character, then most of your Essences at rank 3 would be DPS ones. You wouldn't have that many tank or healer ones, especially if, you were a rogue. Now, that would mean your new healer or tank alt would not benefit from the new system. Here's how it works. So some Essences come in sets of 3, like, say, the Mythic Plus ones of the Focusing Iris, the Lifebinder's Invocation, and the Anima of Life and Death. Now, if a character has one of them, let's just say the DPS one, then the other two, so the tank and the healer ones, well, they will be available for purchase via the Echoes of Nylothis system on your alts, say your tank or healer alt. It should have launched in that state, obviously, but it is at least good that Blizzard made the needed change. I mean, uncharacteristically quickly. It was like 2 days. Now, that's not to say that all of the launch has been ideal. There were a few bugs. There's especially one over emissaries. So you were supposed to be getting echoes from emissaries, but you wouldn't. And it turned out this was a bug that was caused by how contracts give you a rep bonus when turning in an emissary. Or at least how that system was working. Now, fixing this for Blizzard ended up being simple enough. They just stopped the contracts from giving you bonus reputation from the emissary turn-ins. Not the world quests, just the turn-ins. And with that done, you should now be able to get your echoes from those turn-ins. Now, that's not all the confusion, though. There is a little bit more. Many people reported not being able to use this system. It actually turns out that the game only registers the essences that your characters have got after the hotfix if you log into them. So be sure to log into all of your characters that have rank 3 essences. Doing so is what's actually going to let the game know that you have those essences and therefore make them be available on your alts via Echoes of Ny'alotha. Now, why Blizzard didn't just iterate through people's characters and do this on the server level, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make that much sense, but it must just be down to some sort of wonky technical implementation or just, some stuff that as pundits we can't really know without being techs sort of working with the specific WoW setup. Well, with all the bugs fixed and the dust settled, how quickly can you actually unlock these? Well, a full clear of a vision gives you 150 echoes, major assaults give you 125, minors give you 75, and then emissaries give you 50. Then raid bosses are between 15 and 25, while LFR wings give you 25. Then for your random BGs, they're between 15 and 25, your arenas are between 10 and 25, and the RBGs are between, 10 and 35? But they increase with your rating. Then Mythic Plus is 3 per keystone level, with the weekly chest giving you 20 per keystone level. Now, when we actually think about this stuff on a fresh alt, do your weekly assaults, you'll get 275, add on to that 5 emissaries, and you'll get the 500 echoes that you actually need to unlock an essence. So there's that. Now, of course, if you can then get your character carried through a horrific vision, just a few clears of that with an alt, maybe a raid, maybe some Mythic Plus, you will get caught up in no time. Now, I still think that simple account-wide essences, just flick of a switch activated, would have been a far easier fix that likely could have been implemented in a far more timely fashion a lot earlier and would have been better. But for now, yeah, this works well enough, at least for the demographic of people who played 8.2 decently exhaustively and now want to try a new character in 8.3. Now, for the people who didn't play 8.2 that much, this is not going to do much, obviously. You'll still have to clear maybe Ashara and co if you want to get that essence. And it's kind of funny, because after doing my Burning Crusade series, or at least the first 2 parts, which are on Patreon, it's interesting. I think that raids being relevant outside of their patch is excellent, but in this case, the game is designed around playing the patch, not the expansion. Now, I disagree with that design, but, I mean, the better design of the old raids being relevant and you playing the expansion, not the patch, that doesn't work here because it's at odds with how the game is literally made, which is to play the patch, not the expansion. And I think it's just that dissonance that players actually feel there. I think that's why the essence have just rubbed people the wrong way. I think if Blizzard do want stuff from previous patches to actually be relevant, they just need to change a whole bunch of things. Like the item levels need to be way squished down. I think we need to be in a far more Burning Crusade-like situation if they want that to actually feel natural to players, where, say Serpentine Cavern and co, where they were relevant for more than just the launch of TBC, let's just say, whereas right now, like Dazara lore, completely pointless, bar maybe getting some transmog or some achievements. Not like that in TBC, but if Blizzard do want you to have a good reason to go back to a past raid, I think they need to seriously think about how they've structured the game, and just them sort of making 8.2 stuff be super relevant and important now in 8.3, that obviously hasn't really worked that well, and I think the reason why is just because of how they designed the game, and maybe they just need to have a bit of a deeper feel, or think even about how some of that stuff's actually working. But anyway, that is the core of the new stuff covered. But that said, there was that mop topic that I talked about earlier, and then there's also 2 big things, because Blizzard have pivoted one of the business models of their games in a very good way, and then also, hey, Shadowlands Alpha Watch, a tiny amount of things have happened, and it is probably worth mentioning. Mists of Pandaria first. Right, MoP had the infamous 14 months of Siege of Orgrimmar. That was a lot of Siege of Orgrimmar, and sure, Timeless Isles was great, but stuff really was a drag by the time we started hitting, that summer. So, what happened there? Well, Blizzard actually did a whole bunch of boosts, and I think it's kind of interesting, because right now we've seen them do an XP boost, which I think is probably a mixture of 2 things. I think they likely know, you know what, a lot of people are at home, we should give them a reason to play WoW that they didn't previously have. That's good for people because it helps people stay at home and do all the things they should be doing, and it's also good for Blizz because it drums up a bit more interest in their game. That's a win-win situation. Now, if I think back to Mists of Pandaria, they did Valor Point boosts, they did Legendary Cloak material boosts, I think they did, it was the Lesser Charms of Good Fortune, they did a boost to them as well, and those boosts would last for maybe 3 weeks each. And that actually had me thinking now, if we're in a situation where 8.3 is a small and not very interesting patch outside of horrific visions. For me personally, I've killed N'Zoth once. It's one of the lamest fights in the raid, and I just don't want to do Ny'alotha anymore. I've had my fill. I really enjoyed it for maybe the first 2/3 of it. I was having fun with those bosses, but I've got no real reason to do it anymore. Now, for me, the only reason why I might want to play another character in 8.3 and actually care about it instead of it just being expressly prepping for Shadowlands, well, for me, that would be doing Horrific Visions. But there's a problem there, because let's say I level up a new character, right? Maybe a rogue, and I want to do some visions of my rogue. Oh, wait, I've got to go through the Titan research tree. Yes, they have time-gated the thing that I'd actually want to do there, which would be sort of gearing up my character by doing the masks and all that cool stuff in the visions. Now, this makes me think back to Mists of Pandaria, where in Mists of Pandaria, 200% or 100% boost to maybe coalescing vision acquisition. That wouldn't be an insane thing if you think about those MoP era boosts and were to apply them to our current situation. Now, I am not advocating for free handouts, generally speaking. I'm saying that there are issues with this patch that provide a large barrier to actually getting to the content that you want to do, because the whole thing was just, designed as this sort of loop with a very set pace. Now, that set pace is maybe okay in your main that you're doing from patch day to maybe now, but if you want to start doing that in another alt, it doesn't really feel good to jump back all the way to here. So maybe a boost to coalescing visions or something like that would be a pretty prudent move from Blizzard. Maybe it would let people get all their new characters and then get those characters straight in to the more challenging parts of visions, and maybe that would be a good thing. So food for thought anyway. I think that Mists of Pandaria stuff was decently successful when they did it back then, and maybe it's worth thinking about right now. Certainly though, that is just a pragmatic solution to a current problem right now, and not something that I think should be sort of super broadly implemented at a policy level. I think if we're going to be doing any policy level things for boosts to resource acquisition, I would maybe think back to Mists of Pandaria's reputation system and valor point system on alts after you did your reps and your VP on your main. I think that is the main thing for Blizz to think about. Anyway, let's move on. Hearthstone. Something interesting has actually happened, and no, don't click away. This is not a Hearthstone topic per se. This is more talking about, well, Blizzard going a little bit more fair. And I think very obviously in the face of competition in the market via Riot Games' Legends of Runeterra, which is a card game that has a business model that is so much more fair than Hearthstone, and even after these changes still is, that it's quite ludicrous. But still, Blizzard... I mean, look, they were basically using the CCG format to, I think, run a FIFA Ultimate Team like pseudo gacha game that was a bit pay to win, especially when you think about how they deprecate old cards, and I get why they have to deprecate the cards into the wild decks for balance reasons, but it did just mean that playing Hearthstone was bloody expensive if you wanted to really get into it, and I think that always sucks. Well, Blizzard have done a few good things to try to reinvigorate that game, so they've announced that dupe protection is coming in. That basically means you can never get more than 2 of the same card. That is an incredibly good move, so yeah, thumbs up there, Blizz. People can now, I think, far faster actually work their way towards completing decks, so that's really good. There's also Priest rework, there's the Demon Hunter class, I think they're reworking Ranked and a few other things, but I mainly just wanted to call this up because this is Blizzard moving in a more consumer-friendly model. Now, there still is a lot of RNG, a lot of that sort of nasty stuff, FIFA Ultimate Team-like stuff that we don't really like in other games that is going on in Hearthstone, that people basically only accept because of the card game analogy, even though it's, it's not like, say, Magic the Gathering, where Magic cards are a thing you can sell, but let's not even cover that. They've moved in a better direction, so they can still do a lot better. I want them to take a look at Legends of Runeterra and implement some of those systems over. But still, yeah, Blizzard, you made a good move, so well done. And let's move on to our final topic. So I just want to very quickly mention the alpha. Now, if you want to know why from a overall game and sort of meta perspective for Shadowlands in the context of 8.3 and how Blizzard have pivoted with the account-wide essences, then you can check out the previous video on this channel, which does, in a lot of detail, cover all of that stuff. Now, broadly speaking about the alpha, yeah, we still don't have it yet. They have been updating it though, right? But it is a build that is available on the Battle.net client, but basically can only be playable or played by Blizzard staff. That means nobody else can really play it, and that means that yes, for all intents and purposes, the alpha testing that we would be thinking about as people who watch content and make content, that ain't there yet. When will it be there? Who the hell knows? I've got to imagine the Blizzard, will have some delays, right, as they're moving to working from home. That's completely understandable. That's never anything that, that they should be bashed for or anything like that. I think it's obviously not ideal for them. I think they know that the alpha testing and beta testing for this expansion is extremely important, and they're probably not that happy that it's likely being delayed by this stuff. So there's that stuff going on. From our perspective, I mean, I want to tell you that I would expect this in 1 to 2 weeks, maybe 3, but I'm basing that off nothing. I'm mostly basing that off, I know that Blizzard will want this to be out as soon as it's possible because they really want the feedback from it, especially on things like the classes and all of that. So yeah, it's in everyone's best interest for this to be out as soon as possible. At least Blizzard staff are actually now in the position where they can be testing the alpha. That can often last from 2 weeks to a month when it's happened in the past. It's just that, yeah, we're in extraordinary circumstances right now, so it's just going to be a little bit more of a touch-and-go situation. My hope here, though, is that even if we end up with a compressed testing period for this expansion, that Blizzard know how important it is not to do a BFA again, and that they will actually listen. Now, I've heard from people that, no, that sounds like I'm being mysterious. No, I think it was Tally mentioned that Blizzard knew, right, well in advance that Azerite was rubbish and they couldn't do anything about it, right, because it was just locked in, it was too late, and that's why it felt like the alpha testers were not listened to. I mean, yeah, so that's apparently what happened with BFA. Which would mean that in BFA they would have known that was the case. But then you look at most of their other decisions in BFA, and I'd even think, if you knew that system was so ruinous to the game, why didn't you gut it preemptively? That would have been better than what we got. So really, I think just given how BFA so obviously exploded back in their face in so many ways, yeah, I think they're pretty obviously going to want to take this testing period seriously. Anyway, that's what's up with that. I'll give you updates as soon as I find out, but past that, I mean, it's anyone's guess when it's actually going to come out. So, there you go. If you want to watch another video, you can check out the one that we published last few days ago, and if you want to, well, if you want something big, we've got a big BFA breakdown video that's going to be, I think, super fun. You know that BFA versus WoD question? I mean, it's a bit of a silly question in some ways, but I think it's a very interesting one in other ways. There's that, the lessons of BFA, and a bunch of other stuff. That's coming out super soon. And if you want to support us and also watch the first 2 episodes of our Burning Crusade retrospective, then you can check that out on Patreon. And a massive thank you to our patrons, especially in these times. It's, I mean, it's been massively de-stressing for me, knowing that, you know, just things are a bit more secure. So, thank you, and I will see you next time.